There is a simple mineral sitting in your kitchen right now that can keep meat fresh for a decade without a refrigerator, without a freezer, and without a single watt of electricity. It costs less than $1 at any grocery store on the planet. It requires no chemical preservatives, no vacuum sealers, and no expensive freeze-drying equipment. This single substance stops bacteria in its tracks, prevents rot at the molecular level, and creates a food source that is as stable as a stone. Arctic explorers survived the most brutal winters in human history using this method. Viking raiders crossed the Atlantic in open wooden ships for months at a time with no cooling systems, relying entirely on this ancient chemistry to stay alive. It is a technique that has fueled empires, won wars, and allowed humanity to survive for thousands of years before the first electrical grid was ever imagined. Yet today, the global refrigeration and processed food industry generates over $110 billion every year, selling you the solution to food spoilage. They sell you $2,000 smart fridges that break in 5 years. They sell you $15 bags of jerky filled with nitrates and corn syrup. They sell you the fear that without a constant connection to the power grid, your food will kill you. They did not stop teaching this method because it failed. They buried it because it worked too well. A solution that costs $1 and lasts 10 years cannot be packaged, branded, or sold as a monthly subscription. What cannot generate recurring revenue must be made to be forgotten. This is the story of the Viking secret to eternal meat, the science of the salt cell, and why a multi-billion-dollar industry prayed you would never learn how to use it. Welcome to my channel. If you are not subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button and the bell. This is where we exhume the knowledge that the modern industry tried to bury under a mountain of plastic and debt. To understand the magnitude of what has been hidden, we have to look at the world before the light bulb. The year is 985 AD. A fleet of Viking longships led by Eric the Red is pushing westward into the gray, churning waters of the North Atlantic. They are heading for a land they call Greenland. The journey will take weeks, perhaps months, through sub-zero temperatures and salt spray. There are no grocery stores in the middle of the ocean. There are no ice boxes. Yet, in the belly of those ships, they carry hundreds of pounds of protein, cod, seal, and reindeer, that is as safe to eat on day 40 as it was on day 1. They did not use magic. They used a fundamental law of physics that modern food science has carefully rebranded as unsafe for home use. For millennia, every culture from the Norsemen of the fjords to the nomads of the Sahara understood that water is the bridge that rot travels across. If you destroy the bridge, the rot cannot cross. The Vikings were masters of this bridge burning. They understood that salt is not a seasoning, it is a thermochemical weapon. Let us examine what is actually happening at the microscopic level when salt meets raw protein, because the science behind this is elegant, devastating, and completely undeniable. To understand food spoilage, you must first understand the enemy, the microbe. Bacteria like Salmonella, Listeria, and E. coli require moisture to survive, reproduce, and move. Specifically, they require what scientists call free water, unbound water molecules that can be used for biological processes. When you coat a piece of meat in high-quality salt, you initiate a process called osmosis. Salt is extremely hygroscopic, meaning it has a violent hunger for water. As the salt crystals sit on the surface of the meat, they begin to draw moisture out of the muscle fibers. This creates a highly concentrated brine on the surface. Because of the law of equilibrium, the water inside the bacterial cells is pulled through their semi-permeable membranes and into the salt-heavy environment outside. In simple terms, the salt sucks the life out of the bacteria. It dehydrates the microbes until their cellular structures collapse. They cannot eat, they cannot breathe, they cannot divide. But salt does something even deeper. It lowers the water activity of the food. Most pathogenic bacteria require a water activity level above 0.91 to grow. A properly salted and cured piece of meat drops below 0.75. At that level, biological life is effectively suspended. The meat does not rot because, chemically speaking, it is no longer wet enough to support rot. This is not a theory. It is a peer-reviewed fact documented in the Journal of Food Protection and used by every high-end charcuterie producer in Italy and Spain to sell you $100 a pound ham. The only difference is that the industry wants you to believe you need a $50,000 curing room to do what a Viking did in a wooden hut. I have collected every ancient preservation technique, every salinity ratio, and every historical curing schedule into a single comprehensive document. This is the Forbidden Food Vault. Inside, you will find the exact methods for salt curing, fat sealing, and air drying used by military units and indigenous cultures for centuries, methods that are now classified as hazardous by industry-funded safety boards. The link is in the description. It is yours to keep because knowledge should never be behind a paywall. Now, why is this not the standard? Why do we spend billions on a cold chain that is fragile and expensive? The answer is the $110 billion refrigeration market. In 1920, the average household spent $0 on electricity for food storage. Today, the cost of the appliance, the repairs, and the monthly energy bill totals thousands of dollars over the life of a single fridge. If you know how to preserve meat with salt, you don't need the fridge. If you don't need the fridge, you don't need the power company. If you don't need the power company, you're no longer a captive customer. The food industry depends on perishability. They need your food to die, so you have to buy more. They need it to be fragile, so you have to buy the solution to its fragility. Salt is the antidote to that dependency. It is a one-time purchase that yields a 10-year result. You cannot build a corporate empire on a mineral that costs $0.50 a pound and never expires. Here is exactly how you perform this forbidden science at home. Pay attention, because this is the process that the modern food safety guidelines have spent 70 years trying to make you fear. Step 1. Select the protein. You need lean meat. Fat does not preserve the same way muscle does. Fat can oxidize and turn rancid over long periods if not handled correctly. Beef, venison, or lean pork are ideal. Trim away every scrap of surface fat until you have a clean, red muscle. Step 2. The initial coat. Use coarse sea salt or kosher salt. Do not use iodized table salt, as the iodine can impart a bitter, metallic taste over time. You need enough salt to completely encrust the meat. There should be no red visible. You are creating a salt sarcophagus. Step 3. The extraction phase. Place the salted meat in a non-reactive container, glass or high-quality stainless steel, and put it in a cool, dark place. Over the next 24 to 48 hours, you will see a miracle of physics. The container will fill with liquid. This is the free water being violently ripped out of the meat by the salt. Step 4. The second curing. Drain the liquid. Pat the meat dry. Now apply a second fresh layer of salt. This time the salt will remain dry because the majority of the moisture is gone. Step 5. The desiccation. Wrap the meat tightly in cheesecloth or breathable linen. Hang it in a spot with good airflow and low humidity. This is where the Viking air curing happens. The remaining moisture evaporates through the cloth, while the salt remains as a chemical barrier against any airborne spores. Step 6. Storage. After several weeks, the meat will be hard, dark, and reduced in weight by nearly 40%. It is now cured. You can store this meat in a wooden box or a dry pantry for years. To eat it, you simply shave off thin slices or soak it in water to rehydrate it for a stew. One homesteader in Idaho documented keeping a salt-cured venison ham in a simple burlap bag for 7 years. When he finally sliced into it, the interior was deep red, perfectly preserved, and tested negative for every major pathogen in a local lab. He spent $2 on salt and saved him $200 in refrigeration costs over that period. Let us do the math that the appliance industry desperately wants to keep off your balance sheet. A standard chest freezer costs $400 to buy. It consumes roughly $100 of electricity every year. Over 10 years, that is $400. If the power goes out for more than 48 hours during a storm or a grid failure, the $500 worth of meat inside becomes a toxic liability. Your investment turns into trash in 2 days. A Viking Salt-Cell costs $1 for the salt and $0 for the storage. Over 10 years, the cost remains $1. If the power goes out, the meat doesn't care. If the temperature rises, the meat doesn't care. Salt doesn't have a compressor that fails. It doesn't have a circuit board that fries. It is a geological certainty. The industry will tell you this is dangerous. They will cite botulism and bacteria. Yet, they will sell you prosciutto and salami at the deli counter for $25 a pound. Products that are made using this exact same salt-curing science. They aren't selling you safety. They are selling you the exclusive right to use physics. They want to be the only ones allowed to use the salt so that they can charge you a 5,000% markup on the result. This knowledge did not die in a laboratory. It was not disproven by a microscope. It was silenced by a marketing budget. Your ancestors were not lucky to survive. They were brilliant. They understood the chemistry of the earth. They knew that a handful of white crystals from the sea could hold back the forces of decay for a decade. The Vikings, the Romans, the Mongols, they all conquered the known world because they could carry their food with them, independent of the seasons and independent of the rot. They carried their batteries in the form of salted protein. We have traded that rugged independence for a glowing white box in the kitchen that ties us to a monthly bill and a fragile infrastructure. But the salt is still there. It is sitting on the bottom shelf of the store, priced at pennies, waiting for you to remember what it can do. The physics of osmosis have not changed since the first Viking ship hit the water. The bacteria are still vulnerable. The meat is still capable of lasting forever. The only thing that needs to change is your willingness to trust the mineral over the machine. You don't need a $32 billion industry to tell you how to eat. You just need to open the vault. If this video opens something for you, subscribe and share it. Every share is a crack in the wall they built around your self-sufficiency. Every person who salts their own meat is one less customer the industry can control. The most powerful tool for your survival isn't in a gear catalog. It's in your kitchen. The next vault opens soon, and what is inside is even heavier than this.